Dairy Queen, Chapter 3 through Chapter 4. Chapter 3, Brian Bells. So off we went to hay, Brian and me and my chatterbox little brother. We rode up the hill, the tractor jerking along past cows grazing, past the timothy and corn and alfalfa. So what's your workout schedule this summer? I asked Brian, all innocent like. He snorted. I'm serious. What are you doing? It's vacation, remember? Summer vacation? I'm just asking because Win and Bill worked out every day all summer. They do weights, stretches, push-ups. Win even made a football field over there. I nodded at the heifer field where the heifers spend all summer. If you don't know, heifers are cows that haven't been bred yet, haven't been married, as Grandpa Warren used to say. My brothers would bring a couple of guys over and work out almost every afternoon. Jesus Christ, Brian said under his breath. I ignore this. You know they say was just about the hardest working football player Red Ben has ever seen. He was real talented, that's for sure. But he got that scholarship because he worked so hard. He isn't that big either, but he gave every game and every practice 210%. I smiled at Brian. You know, Winshaw is one heck of a role model. Just then we pulled into the hay meadow. The hay bales spread everywhere like trash after a party. I built yesterday afternoon, and by now the dew had burned off, so we could start bringing the bales in. It's really important that the hay be dry when you bring it in, because if there's any moisture, it starts to rot and heat up until the whole bale catches on fire and the barn burns down, which you don't want. Most other farms around here use the new baling machines that make a huge round bale, so heavy you have to move it with a forklift. Knowing how poor we are, you're probably not surprised to hear that we have the same baler Grandpa Warren brought back in the Dark Ages, and it makes old-fashioned small bales that one person can pick up, more or less. You can even hear the term, you ever hear the term backbreaking? This jar was about to define it. Can I drive the tractor? Brian asked, trying to get out of the heavy lifting. Curtis and I exchanged a look. Driving always goes to the weakest person. I started driving the tractor when I was 6 years old, when Bill, who was 9, could wrestle the barrels into place. I shrugged. Sure. Brian climbed in. What's that pedal? That's the clutch, I said. You mean this is a stick shift? He asked. Yeah, I said straight-faced. No such thing as an automatic tractor. Curtis snorted loudly. Brian flushed. Doesn't your dad? I asked. This is as slow as I could, because it was. You know, worth lingering over. Doesn't your dad own a truck dealership? We don't sell tractors, Brian said. Like that explained everything. He was looking daggers at Curtis, who was, in his quiet way, was rubbing it in. Curtis has always taken the Red Ben Harley thing really hard. Let's let's just have Curtis drive, I offered. We needed Brian after all. Curtis and I could hay by ourselves if we had to. We had already done it twice this summer, but it had been pretty awful. So Curtis putted back and forth across the field, trying to get as close to each bale as possible and slowing down where we were behind, while Brian and I humped bales into the wagon. Our hay bale weighs about 50 pounds and it's about the size of a filing cabinet, with two big loops of baling twine rope kind of holding the hay together. That's how you pick up the bale with the twine. And you better wear gloves because that twine will cut your hands up in about 5 seconds. Which it did to Brian, I saw, because he wouldn't wear them even though I said, there's gloves in the tractor just as clear as daylight. It's hard enough to pick up a hay bale, but you sure can't toss one if your hands are all raw. So Brian would just carry a bale over and lay it in the wagon with this huge sight, and then look at his hands, which were getting all pink, and then look down the field at all the hay bales we had left to get, and then sigh again like this was all too much. Eventually, at least he put the gloves on. He was smart enough to do that. The thing with haying on most jobs really that I know of is that you can't think about how much you have left to do because that's just one thought, one sad thought that'll make you bummed out all day long. Instead, you've got to think about how much you've already done. I never look down the field. I just keep my eye on the wagon. First layer of bells and hooray, second layer hooray, third yippee. And then the top layer is when you have to really swing the bell to build up enough momentum to get it up there. That's even better because it means the wagon's almost full. You can quick load it and drive back to the barn to unload. Although it's not best not to think about that part either. It was hard though. I couldn't really get into a zone and just work away until it was done because of Brian. Because every time he loaded a barrel, he wiped his face off and looked at all the barrels we had left and groaned a little bit. Even though he was twice as slow as me, really, I counted. I could easily get 2 barrels loaded for every one of his. Plus, he kept looking up at the sky, too. I couldn't believe that the sun was still up there burning so hot. But guess what? It was. Then he'd shake out his t-shirt, trying to lose the little bits of grass seeds stuck all over his skin. That's impossible to do once you're sweating. That's the thing about hanging. It's hot and slow and back-breaking. But worst of all, it's itchy. Even so, though, we were faster, kinda, than just me doing it with Curtis driving. It seemed a lot longer. And Brian couldn't figure out that hip thrust you need to get the barrels up high. So he just handed them to me instead. And I tossed them up and climbed the side of the wagon to put them in place, while he wiped his face off and shook out his t-shirt again. Really need some water, he mumbled. There's some back at the barn, I said. He sighed. We finally filled the wagon, and Curtis drove as carefully as he ever has back to the barn with Brian and me hanging onto the side of the wagon, trying not to think about how itchy we were. I was, anyway. I can't speak for Brian. Then I got to back the wagon up into the barn hayloft so we all could have so much fun unloading. It's not as much work as loading. Thank God, because you don't have to walk as much. You're out of the sun, although it's not like the hayloft is air conditioned or anything, or dust free. Plus, you have to be careful when you stack the hay bales because you're stacking them so high. And if you leave gaps, the whole stack could collapse when you're climbing on it and break your leg. But at least Curtis was helping us unload, so we got it done faster. We didn't save too much. Then thank God it was time for lunch. We got to the kitchen, and right there in the middle of the table were these huge, beautiful sandwiches with sliced tomatoes and everything, and pickles alongside. They looked like something from a magazine. I poked at them because I thought they weren't real. They were a joke. Wait till everyone's seated, Dad said for the millionth time. Brian looked surprised as well. Surprised, impressed, not surprised, disgusted the way he normally looked. Wow, Mr. Swing, those look great. Dad felt like we ate like this every day. So this was it. Showing off for Holly, I glanced at Curtis. He figured it out too, and he wasn't too pleased. If Brian wasn't there, I would have asked Dad what TV show he'd seen them on, but instead I just started eating. It didn't make me very happy though. Dad doing all this for a jerk like Brian. Something needed to be done about that. Brian, I asked, no one answered. Are you captain? No. Dad perked up a bit. You're not captain? No, Brian repeated, clearly just loving this topic. Dad frowned. You're quarterback and you're not captain. That's unnatural. If the quarterback isn't running the team, that's a team without a serious problem. Brian just stared at his plate, chewing away. We ate in silence for the rest of the meal, except that every once in a while, Dad would say, just in case we hadn't heard, QB has to be captain. Dad and I don't get along most of the time. Maybe all of the time. But he sure did cooperate with me on that one, even if he didn't know he was doing it. Heading back to the hayfield for the second load, Brian didn't say too much, just studied his hands, which were all sore looking. Welcome to farming, son. My brothers were both captains, I offered. Win was captain even when he was a junior. He used to call everyone on the team every week all summer just to see how they were doing and make sure they were training enough. Per Jesus, Brian muttered. And if they so perfect, how come they're not here? Because I tripped right in. Happy I could brag about them some more. They're both working at this football camp in Chicago with players from all over the country. There are scouts there and everything. And that's more important than helping your family. Brian looked at me when he asked it to, straight in the face. I stared back at him, trying to think of some smart response, which was hard because all I could really think was then he just punched me right in the gut. That's how much that question hurt, and there was no way in heck I would ever tell Brian Nelson of all people why. But he just kept looking at me until finally I managed to get out something about how we needed to go to work, and we pulled into the hayfield and started loading up the wagon, the sun beating down twice as hard, while I tried to ignore what had just happened. At one point, smart optimist that she is showed up with her football like we all stopped working and played catch with her for a couple hours instead. Of course, Brian did. Okay, you've probably figured out by now that Brian Nelson is not my all-time favorite person, but I stood for a minute watching him throw because he had just about the prettiest arm I've ever seen. Even though Smuts' football was a little flat and slimy, he just sent it through the air every time like a bullet. But Smut would go tearing after it and bring it back just as fast as she could go, so she'd get to run after it again. Dang, he had a handsome arm. The rest of him was handsome too, which I'm sure makes you wonder why I haven't mentioned that before, but he was stuck up enough already, and it didn't have anything to do with his arm. Anyway, so as you would know if you thought about it for even a second, but still I could see why Jimmy Art would be interested in keeping this guy around. Brian caught me looking at him and grinned like he won something, and I pointed to the wagon to remind him to get back to work, just to show I meant business. So we finally filled the wagon, leaving half a load in the field that me and Mr. Cooperator would have to come back for ourselves, by ourselves, because Curtis had to go to baseball practice. His little league was almost to states, so it was a really big deal. And of course, anyone on a winning team like that gets such chores. Brian was pleased to hear about that, you can be sure. So Curtis went off with his ride to practice, and Brian and I headed into the loft and started unloading. Brian every once in a while gave this little cough just to let me know how dry and dusty the barn was. Are you too thirsty? He asked after a while. No, I said, even though hay dust coated my mouth. That made him mad, that I wouldn't get water and therefore he couldn't get water either because that would show what a wimp he was. His cell phone rang, one of those extremely annoying songs that cell phone owners are so in love with because for some reason they can't tolerate a plain old-fashioned ring. Finally, whoever it was hung up and went back to painting her nails or something. Brian kept sitting down. He loved a pair of the stack and then sat down on it, shaking out his arms each time like there was nothing in them. I've never seen anyone move as slow as Brian, not even Grandpa Warren with his arthritis. It was like he was in a contest to see who could do the least work. Only he was the only contestant, plus he was really angry now, which was good because it kept my mind off how thirsty I was. He muttered something under his breath. What? I asked. You probably jump off the roof if they told you to. What are you talking about? Don't you see how you live? You do all the work they expect you to do and you don't even mind. It's like you're a cow. And one day in about 50 years, they're going to put you in a truck and take you away to die. And you're not even going to mind that either. Brian shook his head like he was truly sorry. Oh yeah? Which was a dumb response. I know. He was acting like he said something all deep and powerful. But if you haven't noticed, I'm not a cow like Joe Mamath. I'm a girl. Forget it, he stood up, out of him. Why don't you get your little cell phone and tell Jimmy Art you're out of here? Brian glared at me. Screw you. Screw yourself. You stay here and work. This isn't what you do. It's stupid. It's stupid and pathetic. You can't even see it. He walked past me and right out the barn. Through the grimy old windows in the loft, I watched him storm over to his Cherokee and really gently start the engine and drive off with just his fingertips on the steering wheel, hurt his because his hands hurt so much. And you know I felt bad, I really did, because now I was stuck finishing up the hanging all by myself, which I did, leaving a loaded wagon in the loft and taking our other even crappier hay wagon, and I had to keep jumping in and out of the tractor so I could load, and then leave that wagon in the hay loft too so I could go milk. The good thing was that at dinner that night, I got to tell Mom, Dad, and Mom and Curtis all about Brian quitting, though I downplayed what a jerk Brian was because Mom always get on our case for trash talking other people. Dad really got really mad though, and you could tell even Mom was upset about how Brian had walked out in the middle of a job like that. The two of them had one of those conversations with just their eyeballs, trying not to talk in front of us. And Dad called Jimmy out right after dinner, shutting the door behind him so we couldn't hear what he was saying. At least Mom made a big deal about me bringing the rest of the hay by myself, saying how and over how great this was. This was okay, actually getting all that praise and recognition, finally just because Brian bailed. Chapter 4. Amber. Amber usually works Thursday nights, but this night she was off, and I was completely psyched. Amber Snyder has been my best friend since forever, since I was in 5th grade and she was in 6th. Amber is really, really funny and really tough. I can look tough if people don't know me, but Amber just is. She's about to put soccer score on the basketball team, and I don't think she could make a free throw to save her life. But she always started because her job was to guide the other team's top scorer, and she had this way of just really freaking out whoever that girl was, of messing with her, even though she almost never got called for a foul. I couldn't really say what she did, but she would stare at them and say things under her breath when the ref wasn't looking. Once the coach told her she had to work on anger management, but it seemed to me she was managing her anger just fine. Plus, Amber is big like me, which is nice. She told me once that I was built like a draft horse, which was a big compliment coming from her. Another time on a sleepover, she did an imitation of me, being carried across a threshold on my honeymoon, carrying me and everything, and I laughed so hard that pop came out of my nose. That's why it was so much fun being her best friend, because I can be all goofy with her in a way I can't with anyone else. She always wants to do my hair. She does stuff to her hair all the time. Like during basketball season, she dyed it fire truck red to match our uniforms. It was really red. She wanted to dye mine too, but I wouldn't let her. This summer her hair was orange like a traffic cone. That's what it said on the bottle even, traffic cone orange. Sort of to warn you how orange you'll be. Her mom Lori turned their living room into a beauty parlor and thinks she's some sort of expert, which she is if you're 60 years old, which I'm not. Sometimes when Amber's cutting my hair, Lori finds out and says she should cut it, and they get into a big fight with me sitting down under the sheet and everything. And the last time that happened last year, I finally just said we had a cow about to calve, even though that wasn't true and I left. And I haven't cut my hair since. Now, I just wear it back in a rubber band and try not to think about it. It doesn't help that Win and Bill and Curtis all have blonde hair, and Bill's is curly even, but mine is just plain old straight brown. I asked Mom about it once, she just shrugged, and said that it just shows there's no justice in this world, which wasn't quite the volume of sympathy I was looking for. Anyway, that night, Emma was in one great mood. She works at this restaurant that does fancy wedding receptions and stuff. She can tell stories about weddings that would make you never ever want to get married, but she's so funny about it that it doesn't matter. For example, the wedding she was working had been canceled that morning when the bride caught her fiance messing around with the maid of honor, who was, of course, the bride's best friend. Every wedding Emma works is like a soap opera. Anyway, the bride showed up to cancel the reception, and then the groom showed up after her. They tried to get her to change her mind, and then when that didn't work, he tried to get his money back from the restaurant. And then the best friend showed up too. I guess because she's a total moron, and the three of them had a huge screaming fight right there in the restaurant kitchen, while Amber memorized every word. So you can imagine how completely happy Amber was to see me. She is one of those people who could describe tying her shoes in a way that would make you just about wet your pants. You'd be laughing so hard. I was in a pretty good mood by the time we got to town, because even though my pretty life mate sucks most of the time, at least I don't have my fiance, my best friend, trying to explain to me in the middle of a restaurant kitchen with everyone listening why it made perfect sense for them to be in the shower and covered in chocolate sauce. I'm not so sure. Amber didn't make up the chocolate sauce part, but she swears it's what she heard. Plus, she snagged a couple bears from her mom's fridge, and that was nice too. The whole way into town, when she wasn't telling me about Mr. Chocolate Sauce, I told her about Brian, about how he was so lazy and stuck up, how he's quit right in the middle of the hand, and she made me tell her over and over again about him getting covered in barn dust and hay, and how he picked up the hay bales like he was an old lady or something, and she laughed her head off each time she heard it. I was still feeling pretty good from all of Mom's praise, but that made me feel even better. We went to the movies, of course. I didn't have much money because I never do, but Amber never minds paying for my ticket or driving me around everywhere. The movie theaters is about the only place in about 3,000 miles to see a movie, and it has 8 screens, so that's where all the kids go. From Red Bend, of course, in Holly, and even places like Provincetown and Westlake. The parking lot fills up really quickly. Sometimes the cops ask to see everyone's ticket to make sure they're not just hanging out. Though I don't see why the owners complain because we're keeping them in business. Emma found a place over in the shadows and we sat on her mom's escort shooting the breeze. After a while, Carly Jorgen's son Amber over and joined us. She's gonna be a senior like Amber and on the basketball team too. And I've always really liked her even though she's a little too popular for us. Amber told about how the Holly coach sent Brian Nelson over and he hadn't made it through the day before he quit because it was so hard and Carly got a kick out of that. Just then, a Jeep Cherokee pulled up under the very biggest light, music blasting away, and Brian and his Holly football buddies and their skinny little girlfriends, who were probably that type of vegetarian that doesn't even drink milk, got out. Everyone else got quiet for a minute, which is obviously what Brian wanted, or why else would he have parked there with the stereo going like that? Amber said brightly they are so hung, which makes us laugh. So we sat there watching them in their leather jackets, backslap each other as their girlfriends giggled, like there wasn't anything in the entire world these girls wanted to do except tell these guys how absolutely wonderful they were. It would have made me sick, except Amy was whispering to us a version of what they were saying. When Brian would punch someone in the arm, she said, I want to about anything. Like it was Brian saying. Then she had the other guy say, oh, Brian, let me snuggle against you. And on until Carl and they were almost dying because we wanted to laugh so hard, but we didn't want to miss anything she was saying. And then as Brian had his arm around one of the prettiest, skinniest girls, and Amber was saying as Brian, I knitted this sweater myself. See the neckline? They saw us. Actually, one of Brian's friends saw us first and pointed us out to Brian, which meant Brian had told him about me. We certainly weren't the kind of girls they talk about or even say hello to if they could possibly avoid it. Pretty soon, all the guys were elbowing Brian and laughing and pointing at us like we was some kind of think film. Amber said they wanted to answer a sound, but they're too shy, which would have been funny except it was so obvious not the case. Then we could hear them making moving sounds. I didn't like that one bit. Then they started, and there's Dairy Queen Nelson. Go say hi to Dairy Queen. The girls were laughing hysterically, and Brian was laughing too, looking over at me like I was the most disgusting thing in the entire world. Amber stood up. Let's kick his butt. I pulled her back down. I would have loved to kick his butt, but we were outnumbered. What? Like you're the only person here from a farm? Carly asked. She's so great. That cheered me up more than anything. Right then the cops showed up and everyone started doing this, going inside and fooling Brian and his moron friends, which didn't make me want to go inside too much. Amber and I ended up behind the bank where her mom works. We do this a lot, which tells you something about how concerned the Red Bank police are with bank security. And one time we saw a cop, he parked at the other end of the lot, fell asleep. That night we started like we always do, talking about how we robbed the bank, which Amber is great at because she knows so much about bank security from Lori. Then Amber started complaining about how Lori wouldn't sign the permission slip, so Amber could get a tattoo, saying Amber shouldn't do something at 17 that she would regret later. This is about the meanest thing I've ever heard anyone say. Because Lori had Amber when she was 17. So Lori was saying that her having Amber was a big mistake. I was really beginning to regret that Amber had only snagged 2 bears when she started talking about all the people in Red Bend who are gay. I know when you watch TV about half the characters are gay, and probably in New York or Los Angeles or someplace like that, you could meet tons and tons of gay people, but I'm okay with that. Some folks around here say mean things, but hey, as long as you don't drink your milk and don't call me Dairy Queen, I don't care what you do. But I also knew Wisconsin doesn't have any gay people, and if it did, they all left. But Amber could see gay people anywhere, from the high school principal who combs his hair over his bald spot, to a secretary who has big hands, though, through everyone and pointed out why each one was mean. It's especially funny because our examples are so good. Like the kid who polishes his belt buckle on the basketball player who wipes his hands on his chest before each free throw. If I challenge her, she'd just say that they were in the closet or in denial, which is something you can't really argue with, even if you know what it meant. So she kept talking, and I kind of fell asleep, which is surprising considering how hard I worked all day. And Emma drove me home, and I'm pretty sure I went to bed, but I don't even remember going up the stairs.